All right. If you have not tuned in to episodes 1 and 2 of Constitutional Chaos, please do, because we are picking up in Article 1, Section 7 today, which basically covers hey, here's the 8 million other things that Congress needs to handle. Welcome back to the Green Egg Girl Podcast, Constitutional Chaos.
Let's go.
All right, so we're diving back in Section 7, and I will try to make this a little shorter than last time. I know 35 minutes of just great Constitution is a lot, but we're going to do it. We're going to finish Section 7 through 10 and then carry on. All right, Section 7. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. Every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate shall, before it become law, be presented to the President of the United States. If he approve, he shall sign, but if not, he shall return it with his objections to the House in which it shall have originated, who shall enter the objections at large on their journal, and proceed to reconsider it. If after such reconsideration 2/3 of that House shall agree to pass the bill, it shall be sent, together with the objections, to the other House, by which it shall likewise be reconsidered. If approved by 2/3 of that House, it shall become law. But in all such cases, the votes of both Houses shall be determined by yeas and nays, and the names of the persons voting for and against the bill shall be entered on the journal of each House respectively. If any bill shall not be returned by the President within 10 days, Sundays excepted, after it shall have been presented to him, the same shall be a law, in like manner as if he had signed it, unless the Congress by their adjournment prevent its return, in which case it shall not become law. We're going to pause right there. Essentially, pretty easy to understand. Everything starts in the House. The Senate can weigh in and make amendments, etc., and go on back through it. But once it passes through, goes to the President. He has 10 days, not including Sundays, to review and either sign it or send it back. If he sends it back and has objections to it, they have to circle back, go through the whole process again. Done. Easy peasy ish. So, this is where having a president who doesn't align with the party in power. Okay, I don't like parties anyway, but president who just disagrees in general, this is the good balance between the two, so he can stop something in its tracks. All right. Every order, resolution, or vote to which the conference of Senate and House of Representatives may be necessary, except in question of adjournment, shall be presented to the President of the United States, and before the same shall take effect, shall be approved by him, or being disapproved by him, shall repass by 2/3 of the Senate and the House of Representatives, according to the rules and limitations prescribed in the case of a bill. So basically, they can't make a move without the president signing off, except to adjourn. But that's a mutual agreement. So as long as the Senate and the House is happy, they can go home. Business is done. But everything else, the president has to approve. That is your balance of power. I don't know if anybody else in middle school, there was like the 3-point triangle of balance of power in the US. So there was Congress and then the president and then the justices. That's that direction. So carrying on into Section 8. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debts and provide common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. All right, let's double check a few of those terms with the handy dandy Mr. Webster. Impost. A tax or tribute imposed by authority particular on a duty or tax laid in government on goods imported and paid or secured by the importer at the time of importation. Imposts are also called customs. So paying all of the customs. Then we also have excises. Excise is an inland duty or impost laid on communities on commodities, sorry, consumed or on the retail, which is the last stage before consumption, as an excise on coffee, soap, candles, which a person consumes in his family, but many articles are excised at the manufactories as the spirit of distillery, printed skills, and linens of the printers. So a lot of those things don't really apply anymore, but that's basically the taxes that you don't see on all of your goods. So Congress is the only one who can decide on all of those, and it has to be uniform across all states. So they don't get to say, Nebraska is only going to pay X percent and Indiana is going to pay X minus 2%. I like math, I'm sorry. So basically, everything has to be fair across the board and all of that. And again, we talked about the general welfare. This is not the welfare state we see today. We covered that back at the very beginning, but we'll refresh on it. Welfare is applied to states, the exception from unusual evil or calamity, and the entitlement and the enjoyment of peace and prosperity and ordinary blessings of society and civil government. So they're just reiterating that they are the ones that have to set that precedent and make sure everything's kosher through all the states. All right, continuing on. To borrow money on credit of the United States, to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among several states, and with Indian tribes. So the Indian tribes, if you remember from very beginning, Indian tribes are exempt from tax and therefore they don't get to vote and they're just separate. So we had to regulate commerce between them and the states wherever they happen to be to make sure that they get the fair shake and so do we, and everything's fair across the board. To establish the uniform rule of naturalization and uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies through the United States. To coin money, regulate the value thereof and of foreign coin, and to fix standards of weights and measures. To provide the punishment for counterfeiting the securities and current coin of the United States. To establish post offices and postal roads, to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors, inventors, the exclusive right to their respective readings and discoveries. So essentially, this is how we end up with, research grants and that kind of thing that everybody has. So to constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court, so they have to put together the smaller courts, to define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the law of nations. All right, so law of nations. Laws of nations per Webster. The rules that regulate mutual intercourse of nations or states. These rules depend on natural law or the principles of justice which spring from the social state or are founded on customs, compacts, treaties, leagues, agreements between independent communities. By the law of nations, we are to understand the code of public instruction, which defines the right and prescribes the duties of the nations in their intercourse with each other. So basically, how everybody gets along. They have to create all of these laws. Mind you, this is a fledgling country at this point. They don't really have a whole lot of laws, regulations, courts in place to deal with disputes between states, between people within their states, and so on. So they're having to set all of this up. To declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and to make rules concerning capture of land and water. All right, I don't know about y'all. I didn't know what letters of marque were. I had to look that one up. Letters of marque. A private ship commissioned or authorized by the government to make reprisals on the ships of another state. Basically, having a ship that helps keep peace between states. All right, to raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for longer term than 2 years. To provide and maintain a navy, to make rules for government and regulation of land and naval forces, to provide for calling forth the militia to execute laws of the Union, suppress insurrection, and repel invasions. So militias are different than armies, obviously. Militia, the body of soldiers in a state enrolled for discipline, but not engaged in actual service except in emergencies. So this is essentially where we get our National Guard and they really report to the state, but there is a certain percentage that can be called to the Fed if needed. So Congress is in charge of all of this and creating when to call forth and what the rules and laws are going to be with them. And the main things are having the laws in place so that they can quell insurrections and repel invasions. So if you recall, during the Revolutionary War, it was militias that repelled the invasion of the British, which was more of an occupation at that point than an invasion, but still. To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia and for the governing of such a part of them as to be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of officers and authority in training militia according to discipline prescribed by Congress. So the states are responsible for making sure these people are trained and that they're getting officers because it is the state's job to do that. But it's Congress's job to make sure that the level of training is going to be uniform across all states. That way, you don't have one state that is vastly undertrained and one that is just a powerhouse. You end up running the risk with that of one state overthrowing another and causing chaos. To exercise executive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such a district not to exceed 10 square miles, as may, by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and all other needful buildings, and to make laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested in this Constitution in the government of the United States and in the department or officer thereof. All right, so the 10 square miles obviously is Washington, D.C. They carved that out of Maryland and Virginia. That is basically to be neutral territory that is only controlled by the federal government. So all of these things where they're saying Washington, D.C. needs statehood or cityhood or whatever is bullcrap and 100% unconstitutional. Isn't that fun? But they also they're also working with every state to make sure that there's forts and everything else needed in states to have their militias taken care of and their dockyards and federal buildings. Everybody knows there's federal buildings all over the place. They're not just in DC. Those are places that have been agreed upon by the state legislature with Congress for the Fed to control. The foregoing powers, by the way, if you remember, we had the Articles of Confederation, so they did already have some laws. So that is the foregoing power. It is the previously existing power. All of those laws still have to be upheld, plus the Constitution. And Congress is completely responsible for making sure all of that happens, that they get merged. All right, Section 9. The migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by Congress prior to the year 1808, but a tax and duty may be imposed on such importation not to exceed $10 per person. So at this point, there's really not that many people in the US, as it is a fledgling country that just fought a giant war and probably had some good sized casualties. I don't remember the numbers, but I know we lost them. Basically, every state can pay $10 for every person that they bring in, and there are no regulations for who may be brought in until 1808. So, all right, so 21 years they have to bring people in without any kind of regulation or check of any kind. So, if the state wants them, they can have them. They just have to pay $10. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion the public safety may require it. All right, writ of habeas corpus per the U.S. Marshal Service, so it's usmarshals.gov is where I pull this from. A writ of habeas corpus orders the custodian of an individual in custody to produce the individual before a court to make an inquiry concerning his or her detention, to appear for prosecution, and to appear to testify. The state courts may issue such writs of prisoner custodians to produce federal prisoners. So essentially, they're protecting you by you have to know what you've been arrested for. They have to provide the proof that you should be detained, you should be tried, you actually get a trial. This all predates everything. No bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. So, ex post facto just means after the fact. So, they can't go back and decide that something's a crime and arrest you for it in hindsight. They're not allowed to do that. All right, bill of attainder, a form or draft of law presented to a legislation but not enacted. In some cases, the statuses are called bills, but usually they are qualified by some description as bills of attainder. So if it hasn't actually passed, been signed by the president or rejected, re-signed, all of that, if the bill is not actually in place and the law is not actually in place, they can't charge you for it. So they're basically just putting the limits on Congress at this point and saying, hey, if you see somebody do this, you can make a law, but you're not allowed to go and backfill. It's protecting the people. No capitation or direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or enumeration herein before directed to be taken. Capitation, a tax or imposition upon each head of person, a poll tax. Until the census is done, they can't change the taxes. If you recall from the beginning, taxes and your number of representatives are based upon the census. Go back and watch episode 1. I explained it in detail. Anyway, so taxes are all based upon census data. They're not allowed to change it until the census is complete. No tax or duties shall be laid on articles exported from any state. So states can't tax each other back and forth. And the Fed can't decide to tax one state and not another. Basically, it's free trade between the states. No preference shall be given by any regulation of commerce or revenue to the ports of one state over another, nor shall vessels bound to or from one state be obliged to enter, clear, or pay duties to one another. So this is where we're a nation of nations. We aren't going to sit and tax one another and tariff one another and have to pay duties back and forth. We're not going to treat each other like nations. We're going to treat each other as one, is really all that boils down to. No money shall be drawn from the treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law. And a regular statement and account of receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. This is my favorite one right now. I'm very pro Doge. Sue me, I don't care. I'm pro Doge because I've wanted to know where my money went, and it's actually in the Constitution. Okay. It's in the Constitution that they have to tell us where our money's at, where our money's going. So there were I don't know if it's rumor or not. I couldn't find the video. I did look. But at the very least, a rumor went around that Liz Warren was out saying that the Constitution didn't say anything about us needing to know where our money goes. I'm hoping she didn't say that because it's literally right here. But if she did say that, she clearly hasn't read the Constitution. And how can you swear to uphold the Constitution if you don't read it? So I'm going to read that one again. No money shall be drawn from the treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law, and a regular statement and account of all the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. So we should know where all of our money goes from time to time. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept any presents, emoluments, office, or title of any other kind from any king, prince, or foreign state. Basically, we can't be bribed, except in the case of all of the lobbies, I guess, and one foreign state. Just the one, though. All right, Section 10. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin tender as payment of debt, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or any law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. So essentially, all of the things that the federal government is supposed to be doing, the state's not allowed to just usurp and go do. They have representatives in Congress for a reason. This is the reason. These things have to be made on a federal level. They have to apply to all states because it doesn't make sense for treaties or money or anything else to be happening within a state and not on a federal level. If you don't see why that doesn't make sense, please let me know. I'll follow up on it. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any imposts or duties on imports or exports except what may be absolutely necessary for executing its inspection laws. And net produce of all duties and imposts laid by any state on imports or exports shall be for the use of the Treasury of the United States. And all such laws shall be subject to revision and control of Congress. We all know we have to pay customs and duties. If you ever leave the country, go buy things in a foreign one and come back, you have to pay the customs on it. All of that money goes to the Fed. It does not go to the states. The states have to collect it. Obviously, you're flying into an airport in a state. However, that is all federal money. So they can't just make up any law and decide that, oh, hey, we're going to have extra duties and it's going to go to our state. They're not that special. Once again, this is all about creating peace between the states and making sure that all of the states are operating within peace and harmony with one another. So if everybody is subject to the same blanket, hey, you're going to collect this amount of money for customs and duties, but it's going to go to the federal government, it helps keep the peace and it helps fund the federal government. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duties of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into an agreement or compact with another state, or with any foreign power to engage in war, unless actually invaded or in any imminent danger, as will not admit of delay. We'll just do this. In case Canada comes down, if Canada comes down and invades Michigan, they may go to war. That's essentially what they're saying. So if Canada comes down and decides to fuck around and find out, if they enter Michigan, they don't have to wait. They can just go to war. Doesn't matter. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Done. Because an invasion has started. Outside of that, no, you need to wait. Okay, unless somebody's actually coming and really, truly threatening you, you need to wait for Congress to do these things. This is why we can have National Guard, which is militia or militia light, I guess. But every state can have militias. Kentucky has a militia. I do know that for sure. So everyone can have militias, but you're not allowed to have actual troops and armies and all of those things ready at all times. That's just asking for war. And they're trying to not have that. So, after 2 very long episodes, Congress had to, that's a lot of responsibility, but it's the reason why we had representatives for the people and representatives for the states to start making all of these laws. They had to create an entire foundation and they had to work together to create the entire foundation of this country. And this is what dictated how they were going to go about that. Obviously, there's tons of laws that are not directly in the Constitution, but this is the benchmark. So anything that deviates from this, not okay. Next episode, we will be diving into executive branches, which is always fun. Hopefully, from here forward, the episodes will be much shorter. And yeah, hope everybody has a lovely day. And if anyone finds me the video of Liz Warren saying something so blatantly crazy that it's completely unconstitutional, let me know.